Good to have you with us. Very spirited debate with professor and author Ricky Jones. But we're going to open up the phone lines again. Don't comment about Ricky said. Wait next Tuesday. But it's the Louisville Live this morning legal line with Karl Truman, 502-267-2422. Good to have you with us.
Morning, Craig.
And we have a lot to talk about, but before we came back on the air, you're a little concerned, and I think a lot of people should be, with text messaging on the cell phone while you're driving. First of all, I should tell you, I got rid of my text messaging on my phone because I don't see how people do that. You know, and then they drive down the road. That's dangerous.
And that's one of the things that, to emphasize again, what I've talked about in the past is that as a personal injury lawyer, I try to do more, have a bigger role than just trying to recover money damages after the fact. Safety and prevention is one of my themes also, that I want to try to help prevent and educate on injuries. And this is a topic that I've blogged about on my blog at injuryboard.com about texting while driving. And just this morning I was watching one of the morning talk shows, and they had a segment on about texting while driving, and that there's been more studies that have shown that texting on your cell phone while you're driving is more dangerous than drunk driving. It's really getting a very chronic problem that, because I didn't consume something to be impaired, but, we've all seen on the news media about the bus driver that rear-ended someone because he was texting, and there's just been so many cases of people getting seriously hurt and killed because of a driver that was texting on their phone while they were driving. And please, don't do it. And talk to your kids. And the younger people are, I think, in my opinion, are the worst offenders, especially the the teenagers and 20-year-olds that grew up texting, and they want to do it while they're driving.
And then when there's an accident, Karl, and they learn that lives have been lost, young lives, and they were on the cell phone or horsing around not paying attention, it doesn't work. But you want to call the legal line right now, 502-267-2422, whether it's an accident, disability, workers' comp, Social Security. Karl's here to take your questions. 10:32 right now. I believe we have a caller on the phone, and it is
Bishop.
Bishop, good morning to you. I'm sorry. I was talking to Karl about the cell phone thing, but good having you with us. What's your question for Karl?
My question for Mr. Truman is, my mother slipped and fell at a hospital facility, and they didn't have any wet floor signs outside of on the premises, and she said she called you all's office, and then someone told her that y'all didn't handle those kind of cases.
Well,
and I feel it was negligent on the hospital staff, for not putting wet floor signs outside of the premises when it was raining and wet outside.
Right. Well, we do handle premises cases, so it's not a matter of not handling. But and of course, without knowing more about the facts of the particular case, premises and slip and fall cases are really tough. They're really tough liabilities, so unfortunately we can't take every one of them.
Yes, sir.
So we do have to look at each case individually and determine. And again, I'd be glad to talk to you, after the show if you want to call me again directly, so I can hear more about what your particular situation was. But we do quite a bit of premises cases, but they are very tough. Kentucky has what's called an open and obvious rule, that if something is on the floor and it was what's called open and obvious that you should have seen it, then that can be a complete bar to recovery. So,
what I'm trying to say is that they had wet floor signs inside the building. Okay, but when my mother stepped out to go retrieve her vehicle. Right. The driver, parking, the area where cars pull into the tunnel was just fully wet and slick, and you didn't know.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I feel like they know it gets rain goes in there and it gets moist and mildew. It seems like they would also post when it's raining that bad. They could post something for for consumers and for people to be safe, elderly, and so forth like that.
Well, Bishop, we do appreciate your call this morning on the legal line. And I guess it's a fine line, Karl. You're inside, you're outside, you have Mother Nature, you have cracks coming out. And I guess that there's a common sense factor and then a business responsibility. It's a tough mix sometimes.
It is a tough mix because certainly if it's raining outside, I mean, there's just so many complicated factors that go into it. There's not just one factor that you can look at. Does a store have a responsibility for wet floor signs? I mean, did they create the hazard, or was it a naturally occurring hazard? When you walk in, was it from people walking in? Were your shoes wet when you walked in, or was the wetness on the floor from them mopping and creating a hazardous condition? And did they have that's why they have the warning signs to be to warn people, watch where you're stepping. So. And that's what makes premises cases where slip and fall or trip and fall cases very complicated, is because it's there's so many factors that go into it to try to nail it down to one thing, and so sometimes we have to be very careful about because you hear about everybody wants to say, lawyers just make frivolous lawsuits to get a quick settlement. It really doesn't happen. It really doesn't happen because cases are so tough to win in court these days that we have to be very careful on what we're pursuing and what we can pursue in court.
Well, and there is a fine line, and we are taking your phone calls, 502-267-2422. We have another one. It's 24 minutes away from 11 o'clock. Good having you with us this morning. Wade from Louisville, you have a question for Karl Truman.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Yes, I was injured at work, and the judge ruled in my favor on my knee injury, but I've been unable to receive treatment for my knee. And I was wondering if there's anything I could do. I have contacted the workman's comp specialist.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you can do to help me with that?
Yeah, that's an ongoing problem that we encounter. You didn't say if you're Kentucky or Indiana. I assume that your case is in Kentucky, workers' compensation claim. That under Kentucky law, even after you resolve your case or the judge rules in your favor, the employer is still responsible for future medical care related to that injury. The problem is oftentimes enforcing that. So what I would encourage you to do is to, well, first of all, if you had an attorney that represented you in your original claim, contact that attorney back and ask them to help you with your medical bills. And if not, then contact the Department of Workers' Claims in Frankfort, Kentucky, and ask to speak to the ombudsman. And so the ombudsman there can give you advice on how to try to get your medical bills paid.
And sometimes, Wade, thank you for your call. Sometimes you have to just stay and get that communication. You have to make those calls, and as tedious and challenging as it is, you can do that. Karl could help in some circumstances, but you also have to help lay some groundwork. I have an email from Dave in Louisville. It's an interesting one, and I want to make sure we put it up here because we do take your emails and we appreciate you sending them to us. Dave in Louisville writes to Karl, I hit a pothole in June and it cost about $300 in damage to my tire rim and alignment. It was in Louisville. Is there anything I can do to get my money back? Good question. A lot of potholes out there toward the end of the winter and spring. I hit a pothole on Westport Road about 3 weeks ago. I thought the whole car was going to dive in it. They're doing some construction work out there. What's my responsibility? What's the workers or city you're involved in's responsibility?
Well, there are, when you're dealing with any government entity, I mean, there's so many immunities to claims. But for $300, unfortunately, it's not enough at stake that would justify hiring a lawyer or paying a lawyer to try to fight that. You may try filing in small claims court. It's a fairly nominal fee. You can do it yourself without an attorney. Generally, those claims usually don't, in my experience, don't get very good response from the city. About the only thing you can really try is maybe small claims court.
And like the cell phones, don't pick up the cell phone and text. Watch out for those potholes. But Dave, good email. Thanks for all the calls today. We're out of time. But next Tuesday, as he is every Tuesday, Karl Truman is here. 1-800-ACCIDENT if you have a question when he's not here. Thanks so much, Karl.
All right, thank you.
Still ahead on Louisville Live this morning.